Good morning, everyone. Members of the School of Public Health at the University of Victoria, my fellow students, and current and former instructors and professors at the university. I'm deeply grateful to be here on the unceded traditional territory of the Lekwungen people of the WSÁNEĆ, Esquimalt, and Songhees nations. I raise my hands in deep appreciation to those nations for their stewardship of this land, which I now call home. I was required to complete 2 areas of focus because I came a little late to the game, and I chose Indigenous and Seniors Health for my 2 areas, as those are populations of primary importance to my employer, which is the BC Public Service. My practicum placement was in the Ministry of Health, in which I work in the Indigenous Health and Reconciliation Division, and I reported to Diana Clark, Director of Cultural Safety and Humility. And the division in which she works is guided by the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. So they work to address Indigenous specific racism in the healthcare system, to promote cultural safety and appropriate service delivery, to respond to Indigenous strategic priorities within the province, to ensure the needs of Indigenous peoples are addressed during ministry service planning and service delivery and policy development. And they do all of this while working with Indigenous partners. My practicum placement was ideally suited to the Indigenous health area of focus within the BA program. The practice scenario that I used in my practicum is the drafting of an implementation plan for the ministry for the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit Cultural Safety and Humility Standard, which I'll refer to as the standard for the remainder of the presentation, as well as producing briefing materials, introducing the plan, and highlighting the areas that the ministry would need to focus on and partner with internal and external to the ministry to advance the work of the standard. My 3 learning goals were advancing cultural safety and anti-racism, understanding racism, bias, and discrimination, and Indigenous human rights to health. So as well as doing a deep dive into the standard, I was very grateful actually to have the opportunity to do just an absolute ton of reading, just to really immerse myself in the area of discrimination, bias, human rights. The Truth and Reconciliation call to action that resonates most directly for me in the practicum work and also just at this point in time in my life and career is number 57, which calls on all levels of government to provide education to the public servants on Indigenous history, including the history and ongoing legacy of the residential schools, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, treaties, Aboriginal rights, Indigenous law, Aboriginal Crown relations, etc. So I take every opportunity that I can, and the BC government is very good about providing those learning opportunities to employees. I will operationalize that call to action in my work in the implementation of the standard within the ministry, and also continue to take the opportunity within the government to take those learning opportunities. You may have heard that the BC government recently enacted the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, which establishes the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People as the province's provincial framework for reconciliation. And of course, that's a big driver for the work that we do in the ministry as well. So I want to talk a little bit about the skills that were most prevalent for me in the practicum and in the degree program generally. So written and oral communication skills, definitely better on the writing side than the oral side, but I will continue to work on that. That will definitely be part of my lifelong learning plan. Program planning was quite prevalent in my practicum and really in my day-to-day work as well. I work in a program area within the ministry, so that kind of work is what I do every day. And then the FNHA describes cultural safety as the outcome based on respectful engagement that recognizes and strives to address power imbalances inherent in the healthcare system. And the FNHA was actually the driver for the standard, which became the foundation of my practicum work. Hello. The three values that I kept front and center during my work was naturally cultural safety was one of them, because that was such an integral part of the work that I did. But the other two were the critical analysis, drawing on the principles of social justice and equity. And you know, the work required the critical analysis of the standard criteria with a view to its implementation in the ministry. So that was the bulk of the work. And access to healthcare free of racism and discrimination is a social determinant of health, and should be the experience of everyone in a just and equitable society. So I felt that was critical to the work that I was doing. In determining what the ministry will do to meet each of the criteria within the standard, was done through a social justice and equity lens to ensure the criteria were not just met as a checklist of, yeah, we've done that, yeah, we've done that, but to really engender the lasting change intended by the authors of the standard. The standard identifies knowledge keepers as those who are recognized by their community as holding territorial knowledge and teachings taught by an elder or senior knowledge keeper. And I had the remarkable honor of working with some really deeply rooted in community Indigenous leaders and knowledge keepers within the ministry and within the province generally in this practicum work, and it was really a joy. The standard was written by an Indigenous-led technical team, so of course there was an Indigenous lens through all of the work. So cultural safety, you can see, is an ongoing theme, given that it was the premise of the practicum work, but it is both a skill to be learned and embraced within Indigenous health, but it's also a value to guide the work. So really it's, for me anyway, it's become quite immersive. Sorry, I'm also using a new computer because that's a good idea, isn't it? The social public health and social policy knowledge pieces. So access to cultural safety and humble care free of racism and discrimination is a social determinant of health, a life course determinant of health, and can increase health equity. I have come to understand in studying the standard is that the health system needs to work alongside Indigenous partners to co-create both policies and processes that support self-determination. So my key insights, sorry, I'm at 7 minutes, so I'm going to try and wrap this up really quickly here. So the learning within the program has been transformational, and I would say particularly learning about situating myself, intersectionality, cultural safety, and varying worldviews has fundamentally changed how I see the world and my relationships within it. And I appreciated working through those concepts with students across generations, ethnicities, abilities, and gender identities who were incredibly gracious to share their view of the world with me in helping me grow through that understanding. I mean, it's not any secret that I'm quite a bit older than a number of the students in our group. So a lot of these ideas were new to me, and I really appreciated the learning. I really enjoyed conducting research. I just think there's so much to know in the world, and we're in an amazing place of information available to us. And I just want to wrap up by saying that I'm deeply appreciative of all of the professors, Hamie and Heather, this semester getting me through what ended up being a tough semester for me, and my family and my friends, and of course all of you who've helped me navigate this. Have navigated the BA program. I'm pretty excited to be done. I thought I might do a master's, but I think I'm going to take a year off and reconsider. So that's me. Thank you so much. I'm not sure if I have time for questions, but I'm happy to take them if anybody has any.